Jason Fitz, always worth my time, the host of First Take, Your Take, ESPN Radio, as he joins me now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. I can't ask you your favorite cheesesteak in the Atlantic City area. You might not have an answer to that, but did you see the Beastie Boys last night that everybody seems to be talking about?
I didn't. I feel like, we're so segmented now on what we have. I don't have Apple TV, so I couldn't see it.
Is that the only place it was?
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I want to say that, but otherwise I feel like an idiot. No, I didn't see it. I'm anxious to see it, though. Hopefully we can see it at some point. They're one of the more interesting music stories, I think, that hasn't been told as much as it could be for what they accomplished in sort of bringing a lot of different people together and doing what they did so fearlessly. So, I think it'd be interesting to see. I'm a big fan.
I saw a lot of tweets last night regarding it, and I couldn't find it anywhere, so I figured I'd miss it. I'd ask the listeners for help, and I knew I had a musical guy with yourself coming on today that I could possibly get some help, but you're no help today on that particular one. All right, let me get your take, number one. Let's start here locally. I guess, how many times is pick 53 the most polarizing pick of the NFL draft?
Oh, one of. You get a little benefit. I mean, Jordan Love certainly has people yelling and screaming too, but look, there's just, it's curious. And really through all of it, I know this isn't necessarily the most popular opinion for a lot of people. I feel bad for Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts at some point wants to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. He was just drafted into a situation where not only will he not get a reasonable shot to start, he's going to be used in a way that won't even raise his profile as a starting quarterback. So, I don't know that I love it for Jalen, the individual. And, I understand that we've all become obsessed with Taysom Hill, but you want to tell me that having somebody that can do unique things in your offense is more important than having somebody that's on the field throughout the duration of a game? It doesn't feel like it was the right move in my mind, for sure, especially given how many weapons there were to be had in this draft.
Yeah, and I think that seems to be the one thing is there were some other guys, and at 53, we feel that that's a valuable spot that you can take that chance. Now, we're starting to hear more and more that other team like Hurts, and they weren't going to get him because the Eagles didn't pick again till pick 103. But Sal Paolantonio was on with Scott Van Pelt last night, and it sounded as if he texted Peterson, and it sounded as if Peterson really endorsed the pick. If the coach says, hey, that's a guy I really want, does that change at all the way we think about it?
Well, I mean, yes and no. And look, he wouldn't have been available later. I mean, everybody knows my Raiders fandom, and the Raiders were high on him. He never would have made it past 80 in my mind. So, and I don't think he would have made it that far. When I talked to Mel Kiper Jr. going into the second round, he said flat out that there was no chance in his mind that Jalen Hurts made it out of the second round. So I do think that there's some level of you love who you love and you go for who you're going to get. And I don't think trading down was going to be a realistic scenario. I also don't think we just always say trade down like there's a presumption that there's a market for somebody to want to trade up, and it's not always that simple. So I understand it. The fact that Doug Peterson has been so smart and had so much success as an offensive mind does give it a little bit more leeway, I guess, but I still just have to look around and say, did you make Carson Wentz? When you have a quarterback you believe in, you have an obligation to surround him with talent every single year to give yourself a Super Bowl shot.
Sure.
Did Jalen Hurts make him down in and down out a better quarterback? No. So even though, Doug Peterson obviously knows more football than I do, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I guess another message that, Jay, they keep trying to pound home is how frequently, number one, Wentz has been hurt, but over the years that they've needed to go to a backup quarterback. When McNabb got hurt, they had A.J. Feely, and then when he got hurt again, they had Jeff Garcia, and then when Cobb got hurt, they went to Michael Vick, and then when Vick got hurt, they went to Nick Foles, and then obviously when Wentz got hurt, they went to Foles again. So it sounds as if they value the backup quarterback more so than, say, a linebacker or a corner or a safety.
Well, and I will say, this has been sort of one of my more curious draft takes for a long time. I think drafting for backup quarterback has a lot of value. There's a spot for me where if you can get somebody late in the draft and you're going to get somebody that's just going to be a clipboard holder for you, he's going to learn your offense. He's not really going to be there to be a threat, but he's going to be your fallback guy. I love a lot of that logic. But again, you're talking about a second-round pick in a draft that particularly more so than ever. I'll go back to one thing that Mel Kiper said to me going into the second round that really hit me. He said there were on his board still 25 players available going into the second round that he had seen on mocks that he respects as first-round talent. And I spent Saturday morning on radio talking to Laura Rutledge about how incredible the second-round talent was. If Jalen Hurts was picked even in the third round, we're not having this conversation. It's the fact that they felt that the need of backup quarterback was so strong, or his playmaking ability for the limited plays he's on the field is so important that it's worth a second-round pick. That's still going to haunt them.
Yeah, great conversation about this all week long. Obviously, the fans are just still perplexed. Howie's been all over the place trying to describe it. And good conversation here with Jason Fitz, the host of First Take, Your Take on ESPN Radio. So I want to get your take then on the Last Dance episode that we just saw that really featured the Bad Boy Pistons and the Bulls and then Dennis Rodman. And number one, how overlooked those Bad Boy Pistons kind of get in NBA lore, right?
Oh, my God. And then just watching, I remember those matchups as a kid, and I remember you always hear about, how tough basketball was back then. But then you watch it, and you're like, oh, my God. I mean, just seeing how physical they were and that they weren't even getting kicked out of the game. I mean, you got guys punching each other. They're just living to see another free throw. It was stunning to watch it. And, intimidation is something we don't hear a lot about. I really found myself missing that era of I hate you, and that era of I would do anything just to beat you because I don't like you. And I miss that level of rivalry in sports.
No doubt. Yes, that was, and if you're watching it with somebody younger and they're a LeBron guy, a kid, I guess you could say, and then you're watching it as a Jordan guy, kind of myself, you're trying to explain like, when Jordan went to the lane, he expected to get his ass kicked, basically. I mean, he expected that he was going to get knocked down because that was the entire philosophy of that team. When LeBron goes to the hoop, and this is to take nothing away from him, it's just a different time, he doesn't have that concern.
No, you're totally right. Now, I do wonder, one thing we have to acknowledge is that the game has changed so much. If LeBron were playing in that era, I presume he would have probably changed his body type too, right? Like he would have been different in that era. But I don't know. I mean, we all saw the moment where they said Michael Jordan put on 15 pounds of muscle. He still looks scrawny compared. Like if he were in today's NBA with his extra 15 pounds of muscle, that would be really cute. And then he'd have to go back in the gym and put on more. Like it's just so different.
No doubt. Jason Fitz, now I want to get your take then on what a Dennis Rodman social media era player would be like.
And that's such the biggest part. My biggest takeaway at this point is in a social media era, I don't believe this Bulls team could have survived because the level of scrutiny that would have been paid to them, the way we cover the NBA now, can you imagine a star player on a championship team going to his coach and saying, I need a vacation, I'm headed to Vegas? The outrage from social media, the following everywhere that he would have as he tried to walk around Vegas, I mean, it would rip him apart. They would have, social media would have never let the Scotty stuff go, the Jerry Krause stuff go. They would have found the little nuggets that was disrupting this team and just absolutely ripped them apart from their fiber. We keep talking about LeBron or MJ being able to play in the other era. I wonder how that team ever could have survived social media scrutiny, and I don't think they could have.
Yeah, I saw a lot of jokes on Sunday night about, so I guess they did load manage back then. They just got to go to Vegas and party with Carmen Electra. And I actually heard Carmen, she was on, I guess, right after I was done the other night. What was that? Spain and Company the other night. And they had Carmen on there, and she was telling some wild stories. I mean, this is happening in the middle of the season where he got a couple of – can you imagine if a player of that magnitude just asked out for a couple nights to go party with – I don't know who the top debutante of the world is right now, but that's what was going on with the best team in the league.
Yeah, and that's just the other stunning part of it because Carmen Electra back then, too, for anyone that doesn't know, wasn't just famous. She was – super famous. So you add that level of all of it to it. I mean, that's just it's the amount of eyeballs and exposure that would go to Dennis Rodman. I don't think his personality could have handled it.
Probably not. And then just to kind of throw into a fast forward to where we are right now, Steve Kerr, who's been talking a lot about these Last Dance Bulls teams, Jay, he came out yesterday and he essentially said he thinks his team is done this year. Does that kind of tell you where the NBA is right now? Because we're starting to hear a little bit of the crack opening for baseball. We talked about golf a couple of weeks ago. But does Kerr coming out and saying we're kind of taking this as if we're done feel like the NBA is kind of halting its take to get back, or that it's going to be some sort of cockamamie playoff scenario when they come back?
I think this is a real indication that the NBA is going to try and make great plans, but making those plans and executing those plans are two very different things, because I keep looking at the NBA saying it's awesome that they want to come back together. We all want this to happen. Hell, as an ESPN employee, my God, I want basketball to talk about. You know that. But you also have to look at just the challenges. And, I was talking to Mark Spears yesterday on First Take, Your Take, and one of the things Mark pointed out is you've got one team that's in Canada. You've got players in the NBA that have gone home to Europe to be with their families. Just the concept of trying to bring everybody to one spot to train is already difficult enough. And then, asking every municipality to open up in the same way at the same time so there's no competitive advantage to anybody. I think reopening is a lot more complicated than we're giving it credit for being. And what you're hearing when you hear Steve Kerr is somebody that's in a state that's taking it particularly cautiously with their approach. They're looking at it a particular way. If I'm living in California, I don't see any way that, you could possibly get the NBA back. And I'll say, frankly, having split my time between Connecticut and Nashville, Tennessee, where, my family is, it's amazing the difference in how Connecticut's handling it versus the difference in how Tennessee's handling it. So everybody's going to have a different perspective.
No doubt. Jason Fitz, we'll leave you with this. The NFL is where we started. We'll end it with that as well. Jason Fitz, at Jason Fitz on Twitter, the host of First Take, Your Take on ESPN Radio. All right, which rookie do you think we will be talking about the most in the NFL this season?
Well, sacks matter, right? So Chase Young to me is going to be there. I would have said Isaiah Simmons, but I already don't love what some of the things I've heard on how Cardinals intend to use him just at linebacker. So I think that's sort of a waste for him. But Chase Young on that defensive line with Jack Del Rio as the defensive coordinator, with Ron Rivera as head coach, they are going to get Chase Young after the quarterback. He's going to put up monster numbers, and just like Nick Bosa, we're going to be obsessed with it. So in a year where because of the shutdowns and the inability to get into camp on time, I think a lot of these rookie quarterbacks are going to start the year sitting on the bench. I keep looking at it saying the one guy that's going to be able to come in right away and put up numbers, Chase Young. So he's going to be the rookie of the year in my mind.
And sadly, he is in the NFC East running around after Carson Wentz. Maybe that's why they needed a quarterback in round number 2. You're going to be sacked so many times. You got to be ready to go, right? All right.
That's actually not a bad point. Not a bad point at all.
There you go. Jason Fitz, First Take, Your Take. And, of course, you hear him here on Wednesdays on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Thanks, pal.
Thanks. You guys have a great week.